My name is Garrett Hayes, and until last Saturday afternoon, I thought I knew everything about my life. I was wrong about nearly everything. The June heat was unbearable in Virginia Beach that weekend, the kind of sweltering humidity that makes you question why anyone ever settled in the Tidewater region. Melissa had left early for another one of her weekend shifts at Norfolk General, claiming they were critically understaffed in the trauma unit. Again, she'd been pulling these extra shifts for months now, and while the overtime pay was nice, I barely saw my wife anymore. "Dad, can we go to the beach instead of cleaning cars?" Jackson whined from the garage entrance, his 9-year-old logic perfectly sound on a day like this. "After we finish," I said, running the shop vacuum across the floor mats of Melissa's Honda CR-V. "Your mom will appreciate coming home to clean vehicles." Emma, my 12-year-old, rolled her eyes from where she was organizing the garage shelves. "Mom barely notices stuff like that anymore. She's always tired." I paused the vacuum. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. She seems different, like distracted all the time." Kids notice everything. That's what makes them dangerous witnesses and honest judges of character. I'd been telling myself Melissa's behavior changes were just stress from work, but Emma's observation hit differently. The vacuum nozzle caught something hard under the passenger seat. I reached down and felt a small rectangular object wedged deep underneath. After some maneuvering, I pulled out a micro SD card in a small plastic case. "What's that?" Jackson asked, suddenly interested in something other than beach plans. "Probably photos from Mom's phone," I said, though something felt off. Melissa wasn't the type to lose data storage devices, especially ones small enough to hide under car seats. My cybersecurity training kicked in automatically. Never plug unknown media into secure systems. But this was from my wife's car, so I grabbed my personal laptop from the house and slipped the card into the reader. The file directory showed dash cam footage spanning 6 weeks. That was odd. We didn't have a dash cam in the Honda. I opened the first video file. The interior dashboard in the footage wasn't ours. Different steering wheel, different instrument cluster, different seat configuration. This was from inside a BMW, not a Honda CR-V. "Why are you watching someone else's car videos?" Emma asked, peering over my shoulder. "Good question." I fast-forwarded through several files, trying to understand what I was looking at. Then I saw our house. The camera was positioned across the street, filming our front door, our driveway, our bedroom window. Frame after frame of our family's daily routines, captured in high-definition detail. Timestamps showed systematic recording sessions, mornings when I left for work, afternoons when the kids came home from school, evenings when we gathered in the living room. My blood turned to ice water. "Dad, you look really pale," Emma said. "Take Jackson inside and start a movie," I said quietly. "I need to look at something." "But Dad..." "Now, Emma." She must have heard something in my voice because she grabbed Jackson's hand and marched him toward the house without another word. I sat alone in the garage, watching footage of my family being stalked by someone with professional surveillance equipment. The camera angles were carefully chosen to capture maximum information about our routines. When I left for work. When Melissa left for her shifts. When the kids were home alone. Whoever filmed this knew our schedules intimately. The later files showed interior shots of our house. Hidden cameras placed inside, recording our bedroom, our bathroom, our children's rooms. Someone had been inside our home, installing equipment while we were away. My hands shook as I copied the files to my secure drive and ejected the card. 13 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, a career that required me to protect classified information, and someone had been watching us for months. But who? And why? I spent the next hour analyzing the footage with the same methodical approach I used for cybersecurity investigations at work. The car interior suggested a BMW sedan, probably 3 or 4 years old based on the dashboard design. Several shots showed partial license plate numbers when the vehicle moved between surveillance positions. This wasn't random. This was targeted, systematic, professional stalking. I needed help, but I couldn't use government resources for personal issues. That would violate about 50 different security protocols and probably cost me my clearance. Instead, I called Lisa Parker, a private investigator who did work for our neighborhood watch committee. Lisa, it's Garrett Hayes. I need your help with something urgent. What kind of something? The kind that might involve federal crimes. There was a pause. I'll be right over. Lisa arrived 30 minutes later, a compact woman in her 40s with the no-nonsense demeanor of a former police detective. She examined the footage with professional detachment, taking notes and asking pointed questions. This equipment isn't amateur hour, she said. High-end dash cam, professional hidden cameras, systematic documentation. Someone invested serious money and time into watching your family. Can you identify the vehicle? These partial plates might be enough. She pointed to several frames where the BMW's registration was visible. I'll run these through contacts at DMV. Should have something by Monday. What about the hidden cameras? We need to sweep your house immediately. If they planted recording equipment, there might be transmitters still active. She pulled a small electronic device from her bag. This will detect most commercial surveillance equipment. We spent 2 hours going through every room. The detector found 3 hidden cameras, one in our bedroom, one in the main bathroom, and one with a view of my home office where I sometimes worked on classified projects. Garrett, Lisa said slowly, whoever did this wasn't just watching your family. They were specifically targeting your work area. The implications hit me like a freight train. Someone wasn't just stalking us randomly. They were gathering intelligence on a government contractor with security clearance. This was potentially espionage. I have to report this, I said. To who? Everyone. FBI, DCSA, my company's security office. This just became a national security issue. Sunday evening, after the kids were in bed, I sat Melissa down in the living room. She looked exhausted from her weekend shift, still wearing scrubs and smelling faintly of hospital antiseptic. We need to talk about something serious, I said. If this is about me working weekends again, someone's been watching our house, recording us, for months. Her face went pale. What do you mean recording us? I showed her samples of the footage on my laptop, carefully editing out the more invasive bedroom shots. Her hand went to her mouth as she recognized our house, our routines, our children. Oh my God, who would do this? That's what we're going to find out. But first, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. She nodded, her eyes still fixed on the screen. Have you noticed anyone new in your life recently? Someone who's shown unusual interest in your schedule, your family, or my work? I don't think so. I mean, there's Dr. Walsh at the hospital, but he's just... Tell me about Dr. Walsh. Kevin Walsh. He's an emergency physician who started about 6 months ago. I've been assigned as his orientation specialist, helping him learn our trauma protocols. 6 months. Exactly when the surveillance footage began. What kind of help have you been giving him? Medical orientation mostly. He came from Richmond, so he needed to learn our systems. We've had several training sessions to get him up to speed. Training sessions where? At the hospital. Sometimes we grab coffee after shifts to discuss complicated cases. He's really brilliant, Garrett. His trauma management techniques are incredibly advanced. I kept my voice carefully neutral. Has he ever asked about your family? Your husband's work? Not really. I mean, normal conversation stuff. He knows you work in cybersecurity, that we have kids. Did you ever mention my schedule when I travel for work? I might have mentioned when you're away overnight. Why? You don't think Kevin has anything to do with this, do you? I didn't answer directly. Tomorrow, Lisa's going to show me DMV records for the vehicle in these videos. Until then, I don't want you alone with Dr. Walsh or anyone else you can't completely trust. Garrett, You're scaring me. Good. Someone has been inside our house, Melissa. They've been watching our children sleep. Until we know who and why, everyone is a potential threat. Monday morning brought answers I didn't want. Lisa called while I was at my desk at Northrop Grumman, pretending to focus on network security assessments while my mind raced through surveillance footage. The BMW is registered to Kevin Michael Walsh, she said. Recently transferred from Richmond to Norfolk. Want to guess when? 6 months ago. Bingo. I also ran a background check. Dr. Walsh has some interesting financial problems. What kind of problems? The expensive kind. Lost his medical license in Richmond for prescription fraud. Currently owes about $340,000 to some very unfriendly people. My blood pressure spiked. What kind of unfriendly people? The kind who break legs when you don't pay debts. I'm sending you the full report, but Garrett, this goes way beyond simple stalking. Your wife's boyfriend is working for organized crime. He's not her boyfriend, I said automatically. Are you sure about that? The question hung in the air like smoke. I thought about Melissa's late shifts, her new enthusiasm for medical training, her increased attention to her appearance, her protectiveness around her phone. Send me everything you have, I said. 20 minutes later, I was reading a report that made my stomach turn. Kevin Walsh had lost his medical license 18 months ago for running a prescription fraud ring. He'd been gambling heavily, accumulating debts to Eurasian organized crime figures operating out of Richmond and Norfolk. The kind of people who didn't offer payment plans. The surveillance of my family wasn't random. It was targeted intelligence gathering, probably designed to create blackmail material or gather information about my classified work. Melissa wasn't just being manipulated, she was being used as an asset against her own family. I picked up my secure phone and called our facility security officer. Jim, it's Garrett Hayes. I need to file an incident report under NISPOM requirements. What kind of incident? The kind that involves potential foreign intelligence services targeting my family. There was a pause. Come to my office, now. The next 4 hours were a blur of briefings, reports, and phone calls. Jim Morrison, our FSO, took the situation seriously from the moment I showed him the surveillance footage. Within an hour, we had DCSA on a conference call. Within 2 hours, FBI counterintelligence agents were driving down from Norfolk. Mr. Hayes, said Agent Patricia Vance, a serious woman in her 30s with the bearing of someone who'd seen too many cases like this. We appreciate you reporting this immediately. It shows the training is working. What training? Government contractors are high-value targets for foreign intelligence services. They use personal relationships to gather information about classified projects, work schedules, security protocols. Dr. Walsh's pattern fits a classic recruitment operation. Recruitment? Your wife has access to your work schedule, your travel plans, your daily routines. Someone with gambling debts and organized crime connections needs leverage against people like you. Agent Vance pulled up files on her laptop. We've been tracking Eurasian organized crime networks operating in the Norfolk area. They've been specifically targeting military and government contractor families. So this isn't personal? It's extremely personal, Mr. Hayes, but it's also part of a larger intelligence operation. Dr. Walsh isn't just stalking your family for entertainment. He's gathering information that can be used to compromise your security clearance or extract classified information. What do? First, we document everything. Then we build a case. Then we roll up the entire network. Agent Vance opened another file. We'd like to request your cooperation in a controlled operation. With your permission, we'll monitor Dr. Walsh's activities while protecting your family. What does that involve? Your wife continues her normal routine, but she's wired for recording. We document Dr. Walsh's attempts to extract information about your work. When we have enough evidence, we arrest everyone involved. Is Melissa in danger? Dr. Walsh needs her functional and trusting. Physical harm would end his access to information. But Mr. Hayes, we need to be clear about something. What? Your wife may have developed emotional attachment to Dr. Walsh. Manipulation victims often experience strong feelings for their handlers. You need to be prepared for that possibility. I already was prepared. I'd been watching Melissa's behavior for months, telling myself it was work stress. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the new clothes, the sudden interest in fitness. The signs were obvious once you stopped making excuses for them. Will my security clearance be affected? Your immediate reporting actually strengthens your clearance status. You followed proper protocols, identified a security threat, and cooperated with federal investigation. That's exactly what we want to see. Tuesday evening, I had the most difficult conversation of my marriage. Melissa, we need to talk about Kevin Walsh. She was in the kitchen, preparing dinner with unusual enthusiasm. She'd been happier the past few days, almost giddy. I suspected she'd been texting with Kevin during her shift. What about Kevin? He's not who you think he is. She stopped chopping vegetables. What do you mean? He lost his medical license in Richmond for prescription fraud. He owes hundreds of thousands of dollars to organized crime figures, and he's been using a BMW to conduct surveillance on our house for the past 6 months. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally something that might have been fear. That's impossible. Kevin would never. I have video footage, Melissa, license plate numbers. Federal agents have confirmed his identity and his criminal background. Federal agents? The FBI is investigating Kevin as part of an organized crime network that targets government contractor families. She sat down heavily at the kitchen table. You're saying Kevin has been watching our house? I'm saying Kevin has been running an intelligence operation against our family. The training sessions, the coffee meetings, the medical consultations, all of it was designed to gather information about my work schedule and our family routines. But I never told him anything classified. You didn't need to. Your schedule, my travel plans, when the kids are home alone, that's all operational intelligence that can be used against us. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. I thought he cared about me. He did care about you, as an asset, someone who could provide access to a government contractor's family. How long have you known? Since Saturday afternoon. I found surveillance equipment hidden in your car. You went through my car? I was cleaning it as a surprise. I found an SD card with footage of our house taken from Kevin's BMW. She was quiet for a long time, staring at her hands. Finally, she looked up at me. What happens now? Now you help us catch him. The FBI's plan was elegantly simple. Melissa would continue her normal routine with Kevin, but she'd be equipped with recording devices to document his intelligence-gathering attempts. Agent Vance explained the operation during a briefing at the Norfolk FBI field office. Dr. Walsh will likely escalate his request for information now that he's invested months in developing the relationship, she said. He'll want specific details about your husband's projects, travel schedule, security protocols. What if he suspects something? Melissa asked. Then we move to immediate arrest. But manipulation victims rarely suspect their handlers until it's too late. Dr. Walsh believes he has you emotionally invested in the relationship. I watched my wife's face carefully. Do you feel emotionally invested? She was quiet for a moment. I thought I did. I thought Kevin understood me in ways other people didn't. That's the manipulation, Agent Vance said gently. It's designed to make you feel special, understood, appreciated. It's a professional technique. How professional? Dr. Walsh received training from his organized crime contacts. This isn't amateur hour, Mrs. Hayes. You were targeted by people who know how to exploit personal relationships for intelligence purposes. The recording equipment was nearly invisible, a small transmitter sewn into Melissa's scrubs, another device disguised as a pager on her hospital badge. She would continue meeting with Kevin, but everything would be documented. "What about our children?" I asked. "We'll have surveillance teams watching your house and their schools. If Dr. Walsh or his associates make any move toward your family, we'll intervene immediately." "How long will this take?" "Could be days, could be weeks. We need Dr. Walsh to make explicit requests for classified information. Once we have him on tape attempting to extract intelligence from a government contractor's family, we can arrest the entire network." Thursday afternoon, Melissa came home from her shift with recordings that made my skin crawl. "He's getting more aggressive," she said, playing back audio from her hidden transmitter. Kevin's voice was clearly audible, requesting information about my work projects, travel schedule, and security protocols. "I need to know when Garrett's away overnight," Kevin's voice said through the speakers. "My friends have some business opportunities that might interest him." "What kind of business opportunities?" Melissa had asked. "Consulting work, very lucrative, but it requires knowing when he's available." Agent Vance nodded grimly. "Classic approach. They want to know when you're traveling so they can approach you separately, probably with blackmail material or bribery offers." "What kind of blackmail material?" "The surveillance footage of your family, compromising photos, evidence of your wife's relationship with Dr. Walsh, anything that could be used to pressure you into cooperation." I felt sick. They were planning to blackmail me using my own wife. It's a common technique. Develop a relationship with the spouse, document the relationship, then use it as leverage against the target. "But Kevin and I never," Melissa started. "It doesn't matter what actually happened," Agent Vance explained. "Perception is reality in blackmail operations. A few carefully edited photos or videos can suggest anything they want." Friday morning brought the break we needed. Kevin had scheduled a private meeting with Melissa at a coffee shop near the hospital, claiming he wanted to discuss serious opportunities for both our families. "This is it," Agent Vance said. "He's going to make his pitch for classified information." Melissa looked nervous as she prepared for the meeting. "What if I say something wrong?" "Just let him talk. Ask innocent questions. Don't volunteer anything, but don't seem suspicious either." "What kind of questions?" "Ask about the opportunities he mentioned. Act interested but cautious. Make him explain exactly what he wants and why." I watched from a surveillance van parked 2 blocks away as Melissa entered the coffee shop. Hidden cameras provided multiple angles of her meeting with Kevin Walsh, a tall, dark-haired man in his 40s who looked exactly like what he was, a desperate criminal trying to appear respectable. The conversation started with typical manipulation tactics. Kevin praised Melissa's intelligence, complained about feeling unappreciated at the hospital, and gradually steered the conversation toward my work. "Garrett must be under a lot of pressure in his job," Kevin said, his voice clearly audible through Melissa's transmitter. "He works hard, long hours, sometimes travel." "What kind of travel?" "Government contracts. He can't really talk about the details." "Of course. Security clearance work is very sensitive, but the travel must be lucrative." "I suppose. We're comfortable." Kevin leaned forward. "Melissa, I'm going to be honest with you about something. I have contacts who are very interested in people with Garrett's expertise." "What kind of contacts?" "Businessmen, international consulting firms. They pay extremely well for cybersecurity expertise." "Garrett already has a job." "This would be consulting work, side projects. Very discreet, very profitable." "How profitable?" "6 figures, for relatively simple work." Melissa paused, and I could see her thinking. "What kind of work?" "Information, analysis. The kind of thing Garrett does every day but for private clients instead of government." "I don't think Garrett would be interested in that." Kevin's expression hardened slightly. "Maybe we should let Garrett decide for himself. Could you arrange a meeting?" "I could ask him." Actually, it would be better if we met when he's not expecting it. These businessmen prefer discretion. You mean like when he's traveling? Exactly. Do you know his schedule for the next few weeks? Melissa hesitated. In the surveillance van, Agent Vance spoke into her radio. Get ready to move. He's about to cross the line. I think he has a trip to Washington next week, Melissa said. Which days? Tuesday and Wednesday, I think. Kevin smiled. Perfect. My contacts will be very interested in meeting with him. What should I tell him? Don't tell him anything yet. Let me arrange the details first. These people value discretion above everything else. Agent Vance keyed her radio. All units, we have attempted recruitment of a government contractor. Move in now. FBI agents entered the coffee shop from 3 different directions. Kevin Walsh was handcuffed before he could reach for his phone. Melissa sat frozen as federal agents secured the scene and began reading rights. Dr. Kevin Walsh, Agent Vance announced, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage, wire fraud, interstate stalking, and violations of the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. That evening, our house felt different. Safer, but also strange. The hidden cameras were gone, the surveillance was over, but the damage to our marriage was just beginning to show. How long did you know? Melissa asked as we sat in the living room after putting the kids to bed. About Kevin being a criminal? Since Monday. About us. About what I thought was happening between Kevin and me. I considered lying, but we'd had enough deception. I suspected something was wrong for months. The schedule changes, the secrecy, the way you talked about him. Did you think I was having an affair? I thought you were developing feelings for someone else. I didn't know you were being manipulated by organized crime. She was quiet for a long time. I did develop feelings for him. That's the worst part. Even knowing what he was doing, part of me still can't believe it was all fake. That's what manipulation is designed to do. How do we get past this? I don't know yet. Saturday morning brought news that Kevin Walsh's arrest had triggered a much larger investigation. Agent Vance called to brief me on developments. We executed search warrants on Dr. Walsh's apartment, vehicle, and associates. What we found is bigger than we initially thought. How much bigger? Dr. Walsh was part of an organized crime network specifically targeting government contractors throughout the Norfolk area. They've been running similar operations against at least 12 other families. 12 other families? Military personnel, defense contractors, government employees, all targeted through personal relationships designed to gather intelligence. For what purpose? Industrial espionage, blackmail, identity theft, and in some cases, actual recruitment of assets. Your family was part of a systematic intelligence operation. What happens to Kevin now? He's looking at 15 years federal prison minimum, trade secret theft under the Economic Espionage Act, wire fraud, RICO violations, interstate stalking. His organized crime contacts are facing similar charges. Will I need to testify? Probably. But Mr. Hayes, there's something else you should know. What? Your cooperation and proper reporting of this incident has been noted at the highest levels. DCSA is recommending you for expanded security clearance and a commendation for protecting classified information. I'm getting promoted because my wife was manipulated? You're being recognized because you followed proper protocols when you discovered a security threat. That's exactly the kind of behavior that protects national security. Monday morning, I returned to work with a different perspective on my job. My cubicle looked the same, my computer terminals showed the same network security data, but I understood now how personal and professional security were inseparable. Garrett, Jim Morrison called from his office, can you come in here? Jim's office was decorated with military commendations and government contractor awards. He gestured for me to sit across from his desk. I've been talking with DCSA and FBI about your situation. About my wife? About your performance during a security incident. You did everything right, Garrett. Immediate reporting, proper evidence preservation, full cooperation with federal investigation. It didn't feel like I had a choice. You always have choices. You could have tried to handle it privately. You could have confronted Dr. Walsh directly. You could have ignored the evidence hoping it would go away. Those would have been stupid choices. Exactly. Which is why you're being transferred to our contractor protection program. What's that? We're developing enhanced security protocols for government contractors who've been targeted by foreign intelligence or organized crime. You'll be leading the program based on your recent experience. Are you serious? Dead serious. Garrett, what happened to your family is happening to contractor families across the country. We need someone who understands the threat from personal experience. The promotion came with a significant salary increase and expanded security clearance. Instead of being punished for the security breach, I was being rewarded for handling it properly. There's one more thing, Jim said. The FBI wants to use your case as a training example for other contractors. Would you be willing to speak at security briefings? About having my family stalked? About protecting your family from organized crime? About following proper protocols? About turning a potential disaster into a success story? I thought about it. Will Melissa be involved? Only if she wants to be. The FBI thinks her perspective as a manipulation victim could be valuable for training purposes. That evening, I discussed the opportunity with Melissa. She was in the kitchen, cooking dinner with the same enthusiasm she'd shown before Kevin Walsh entered our lives. They want me to talk about being manipulated? They want you to help other people recognize manipulation techniques, so they don't go through what we went through. What we're still going through. Are we still going through it? She set down her cooking spoon and looked at me seriously. Garrett, I need you to understand something. For 6 months, I thought Kevin Walsh was the most interesting thing that had happened to me in years. I understand that. Do you? Because I feel like an idiot. I feel like I betrayed our family for someone who was just using me. You didn't betray our family. You were targeted by professionals who knew exactly how to manipulate your emotions. How do I know that won't happen again? Because now you know what to look for. And because we're going to rebuild our marriage stronger than it was before. How? Counseling, communication, complete honesty about everything. Everything? Everything. No more secrets, no more assumptions, no more taking each other for granted. She was quiet for a moment. I'd like to do the training sessions with you. Are you sure? If my stupidity can help other families avoid this, then something good comes out of it. It wasn't stupidity, Melissa. It was sophisticated psychological manipulation by trained criminals. It felt like stupidity. That's part of the manipulation, making victims blame themselves instead of recognizing they were targeted by professionals. 3 months later, I was standing in front of a conference room full of government contractors and their spouses, explaining how personal relationships could be weaponized against national security. Dr. Walsh didn't randomly choose my wife, I told the audience. He researched our family, identified vulnerabilities, and executed a systematic plan to gain access to classified information through emotional manipulation. Melissa stood beside me, sharing her perspective on the manipulation techniques Kevin had used. He made me feel special, she explained. Appreciated. Like I was the most intelligent person he'd ever met. That's not accident. It's a professional technique designed to create emotional dependency. How did he get access to your family? Asked a woman in the front row. Through my work environment, Melissa answered. He was assigned to my hospital as a new physician. I was assigned as his orientation specialist. It gave him legitimate reasons to spend time with me and ask questions about my personal life. What questions? Innocent things at first. My husband's work schedule, our children's activities, our family routines. Nothing that seemed suspicious until we realized he was building a complete intelligence picture of our lives. How long did the manipulation continue? 6 months. 6 months of gradually increasing requests for information, emotional manipulation, and systematic surveillance of our family. A man in the back raised his hand. How do you recognize this kind of manipulation? I answered that one. Excessive interest in your work schedule, questions about family routines, requests to meet family members, and most importantly, creating situations where you feel you owe them something. Kevin made me feel like I was helping his medical career, Melissa added. Like our training sessions were crucial to his success. It created a sense of obligation that made me want to help him even more. What about the surveillance? Professional equipment, systematic documentation, and patient observation over months, I explained. This wasn't amateur stalking. This was intelligence gathering with specific objectives. What were the objectives? Blackmail material, access to classified information, and recruitment of assets. In our case, they wanted to use compromising material about my wife's relationship with Dr. Walsh to pressure me into providing classified information. After the presentation, Agent Vance approached us in the hallway. That was excellent. You're natural teachers. It feels good to turn something terrible into something useful, Melissa said. How's your marriage? Agent Vance asked directly. Better than it was before this happened, I answered honestly. Counseling helped us address issues we'd been ignoring for years. And the criminal case? Kevin Walsh was sentenced to 15 years federal prison. His organized crime associates received similar sentences. The entire network was dismantled. Any regrets about reporting it immediately? None. If I'd tried to handle it privately, Kevin might have escaped and continued targeting other families. 6 months after Kevin Walsh's arrest, our family had settled into a new normal. Emma was excelling in a cybersecurity program for gifted students, inspired by her father's work protecting other families. Jackson had returned to his normal 9-year-old concerns about sports and video games. Melissa and I were attending marriage counseling twice a week, working through the trust issues created by Kevin's manipulation. The process was difficult but productive. How do you feel about Garrett's expanded security clearance? Our counselor asked during one session. Proud, Melissa answered. He turned a potential disaster into career advancement by doing the right thing. And how do you feel about Melissa's cooperation with the FBI investigation? The counselor asked me. Grateful. She could have refused to help, but she chose to protect other families from going through what we experienced. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found that SD card? I considered the question. Kevin would have continued gathering intelligence until he had enough material to blackmail me. Then I would have faced a choice between protecting my family and protecting classified information. What choice would you have made? I would have reported it to federal authorities and accepted the consequences. Even if it meant losing your family? Especially then. Because protecting classified information protects everyone's families, not just mine. Melissa reached over and took my hand. That's why I fell in love with you 13 years ago. Your sense of duty to something bigger than yourself. Is that the same reason you were attracted to Kevin Walsh? No. Kevin made me feel like I was the only thing that mattered to him. It was flattering, but it wasn't real. What's the difference? Garrett's duty to protect people includes protecting me and our children. Kevin's attention to me was designed to exploit me and harm my family. The counselor nodded. Understanding that difference is crucial to preventing future manipulation. 1 year after the arrest, I was promoted again, this time to Director of Contractor Security for the entire Norfolk region. My job was protecting government contractor families from exactly the kind of targeting we'd experienced. Garrett, Jim Morrison said during my promotion ceremony, you've transformed a personal security incident into expertise that's protecting hundreds of families. It wasn't personal choice. It was professional obligation. Same thing in your case. That's what makes you good at this job. The promotion came with resources to develop comprehensive protection protocols for contractor families. We implemented early warning systems, suspicious activity reporting procedures, and enhanced background checks for people with access to contractor families. How many families have you helped so far? Melissa asked over dinner one evening. Directly, about 30. Indirectly, probably hundreds through the training programs. Any cases similar to ours? Several. Organized crime networks specifically targeting government contractors through personal relationships. But now we know what to look for. Do the families always cooperate with investigations? Not always. Some people try to handle it privately, which usually makes things worse. What happens then? Best case scenario, the criminals move on to easier targets. Worst case, the contractors lose their security clearances and the criminals get what they wanted. Have you ever wondered if Kevin Walsh really cared about me? I looked at my wife carefully. Do you still wonder about that? Sometimes. I know it was manipulation, but the feelings were real for me. That's what made it effective manipulation. Kevin Walsh was trained to create real emotions in his targets. How do I know my feelings for you are real? Because I'm not trying to extract classified information from you. Because I don't disappear when you can't give me what I want. Because I'm still here after you've seen me at my worst. And because you love our children more than you love your career. Kevin Walsh would have sacrificed our children's safety for money. That's the difference. 2 years after Kevin Walsh's arrest, he was still serving his federal sentence. The organized crime network had been permanently dismantled, with most members deported or imprisoned. The case had become a training example used throughout the federal government. Mr. Hayes, Agent Vance called one afternoon, we've received a request from the State Department to brief international allies on contractor protection. Would you be interested in traveling to present your case? Which allies? NATO countries dealing with similar threats to their defense contractors. What would be required? 2 weeks in Europe, briefing security officials on recognition and response protocols. Can Melissa come with me? The State Department specifically requested that she participate. Her perspective on manipulation techniques is considered crucial for training purposes. That evening, I discussed the opportunity with my family. 2 weeks in Europe, Emma asked. Can we come? It's a working trip, sweetheart, but maybe we can plan a vacation there afterward. Will you be talking about Kevin Walsh again? Jackson asked. We'll be talking about protecting families like ours from people like Kevin Walsh. Good. I hope you help lots of families. Melissa looked thoughtful. I never imagined that being manipulated by a criminal would become my career qualification. It's not your career qualification. Your intelligence, strength, and willingness to help others is your qualification. The manipulation was just the catalyst. Do you ever regret finding that SD card? Never. Do you regret that I found it? No. I regret being fooled by Kevin, but I'm grateful you discovered the truth before something worse happened. What could have been worse? Kevin could have succeeded in recruiting you as an asset. Our children could have been used as leverage against you. You could have lost your security clearance and career. Or Kevin could have simply disappeared with whatever intelligence he'd gathered, leaving us never knowing we'd been targeted. That might have been worse than everything else. Why? Because we never would have addressed the problems in our marriage that made me vulnerable to manipulation in the first place. 3 years later, our family had become the face of contractor security success stories. Emma was accepted to the Naval Academy's cybersecurity program, following her father's example of protecting national security. Jackson had developed a healthy skepticism of strangers who showed excessive interest in our family. Melissa had completed a master's degree in counseling psychology, specializing in manipulation victims. She worked with other families who'd been targeted by criminal networks. Do you ever think about Kevin Walsh? She asked one evening as we prepared for another international briefing. Only professionally. He's become a case study, not a person. I still think about him sometimes. As a person? as a lesson about how easily I was fooled, how much damage he could have caused, how close we came to losing everything. Do you regret the relationship you thought you had with him? I regret the stupidity, but not the feelings. Those feelings taught me what was missing in our marriage. What was missing? Attention, appreciation, the sense that I was important to someone. You were always important to me. But you never told me. You assumed I knew. I won't make that assumption again. And I won't assume that someone's attention is harmless just because it makes me feel good. That's what makes us stronger than we were before. 5 years after Kevin Walsh's arrest, I was speaking at a NATO security conference in Brussels. The audience included defense officials from 27 countries, all dealing with similar threats to their contractor families. The Walsh case demonstrates that personal relationships can be weaponized against national security, I explained to the international audience. Criminal networks specifically target contractor families because emotional manipulation is more effective than traditional espionage techniques. How do you prevent this kind of targeting? Asked a German official. Education, early warning systems, and immediate reporting protocols. Contractor families need to understand their valuable targets and recognize manipulation techniques. What about prosecution? International cooperation is essential. Criminal networks operate across borders, so law enforcement response must be coordinated internationally. How has this experience affected your family? Melissa answered that question. It taught us that our personal security and national security are inseparable. Protecting our family means protecting our country, and protecting our country means protecting our family. Do you recommend other families cooperate with investigations if they're targeted? Absolutely, I said. Private handling of security threats usually makes them worse. Federal authorities have resources and expertise that families don't have. What about the emotional cost? The emotional cost of cooperation is temporary, Melissa explained. The emotional cost of letting criminals succeed is permanent. After the presentation, a British intelligence officer approached us privately. We're seeing similar cases throughout Europe. Would you be willing to help develop international protocols? What would that involve? I asked. Coordinated training, shared intelligence on criminal networks, and standardized response procedures. How long would that assignment last? 2 years minimum, possibly longer. I looked at Melissa. What do you think? I think Kevin Walsh's manipulation of our family shouldn't just protect American contractors. It should protect families everywhere. Is that a yes? That's a yes. 6 months later, we moved to London for a 2-year assignment developing international contractor protection protocols. Emma was attending university in England, studying cybersecurity and international relations. Jackson was thriving in British schools, developing a slight accent that amused his American grandparents. Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if I hadn't found that SD card? I asked Melissa one evening as we walked along the Thames. Probably boring and safe and completely ordinary. Do you miss boring and safe? Sometimes, but not often. Why not? Because boring and safe would have meant Kevin Walsh succeeded. It would have meant other families went through what we went through. It would have meant our children grew up not understanding how to protect themselves. Do you think Emma and Jackson are better prepared for the world because of what happened? Emma's studying cybersecurity because she wants to protect families like ours. Jackson automatically suspicious of strangers who ask too many questions about our family. They're not paranoid, but they're aware. Is that a good thing? In today's world? Absolutely. What about us? Are we better because of what happened? We're stronger, more honest, more appreciative of what we have, and more careful about who we trust. But not cynical. Kevin Walsh taught us the difference between healthy skepticism and destructive paranoia. What's the difference? Healthy skepticism protects your family. Destructive paranoia isolates your family. 7 years after Kevin Walsh's arrest, he was still serving his federal sentence with no possibility of parole for another 8 years. The organized crime network had never recovered from the FBI investigation triggered by our case. Emma had graduated from university and was working for the British government's cybersecurity division. Jackson was in his final year of secondary school, planning to study international law with a focus on organized crime prosecution. Melissa and I had completed our international assignment and returned to Norfolk, where I was now regional director for contractor security across the entire eastern seaboard. Melissa was directing a victim services program for families targeted by criminal networks. "Do you ever regret how our lives turned out?" she asked one evening as we prepared for another training conference. "Never. Do you?" "I regret that Kevin Walsh happened to us, but I don't regret how we handled it or where it led us." "What's the best thing that came out of it?" "Our marriage is stronger than it's ever been. Our children are safer than most kids their age, and we've helped hundreds of families avoid what we went through." "What's the worst thing?" "Knowing that there are people in the world who would use my feelings against my own family." "Does that make you more cautious in relationships?" "It makes me more aware. I pay attention to people's motivations now." "Do you trust people less?" "I trust the right people more and the wrong people less." "How do you tell the difference?" "Time, consistency, whether their actions match their words when nobody's watching." Kevin Walsh was consistent for 6 months. Kevin Walsh was performing for 6 months. There's a difference. What's the difference? Performance ends when the audience leaves. Kevin's interest in me disappeared the moment he was arrested. Real relationships survive crises. 8 years later, I was testifying before Congress about international threats to government contractors. The hearing was part of broader legislation to strengthen protection for contractor families. "Mr. Hayes," the committee chairman asked, "based on your experience, how serious is the threat to contractor families?" "Very serious, Mr. Chairman. Criminal networks and foreign intelligence services specifically target contractor families because emotional manipulation is more effective than traditional espionage." "How many cases have you handled personally?" "Over 300 cases in the past 8 years. Everything from simple stalking to sophisticated recruitment operations." "What percentage of targeted families cooperate with investigations?" "About 70%. The families who cooperate almost always have successful outcomes. The families who try to handle it privately usually face escalating threats." "What do you recommend for families who think they're being targeted?" "Immediate reporting to federal authorities. Don't try to handle it privately. Don't confront the suspects directly. Document everything and let professionals handle the investigation." "What about prevention?" "Education is the most effective prevention. Contractor families need to understand their valuable targets and recognize manipulation techniques before they become victims." "Mrs. Hayes," the chairman addressed Melissa, "what would you tell spouses who might be vulnerable to manipulation?" "Pay attention to people who show excessive interest in your family's routines, work schedules, or personal information. Be suspicious of anyone who makes you feel specially chosen or uniquely understood." "How do you recognize manipulation?" Manipulators create artificial intimacy very quickly. They make you feel like you've known them forever within weeks of meeting them. Real relationships develop gradually. What if someone is already involved with a potential manipulator? Report it immediately. Don't worry about embarrassment or protecting the relationship. If it's legitimate, investigation will confirm that. If it's manipulation, delay makes everything worse. After the hearing, we walked through Washington, D.C. in the late afternoon sunshine. Emma and Jackson had both flown in to watch the testimony. Now adults with careers and perspectives shaped by their childhood experience with criminal targeting. "How does it feel to be the poster family for contractor security?" Emma asked over dinner. "Strange," I answered honestly. "I never expected finding an SD card in your mother's car would become a career." "Do you mind being known for this?" "I'm not known for being a victim. I'm known for turning a security threat into professional expertise. What about you, Mom? Jackson asked Melissa. I'm known for helping other manipulation victims recognize what happened to them and move forward. That feels worthwhile. Do you ever wish it had never happened? I wish Kevin Walsh had never targeted our family, Melissa said. But I'm grateful for how we handled it and where it led us. Why? Because now we know we can survive anything. Because our marriage is stronger than it was before. Because we've helped hundreds of families protect themselves. And because you two are better prepared for the world than most young adults, I added. How so? Emma asked. You understand that personal security and national security are connected. You know how to recognize manipulation. You know when to report suspicious activity. Is that because of what happened when we were kids? It's because of how we chose to respond to what happened when you were kids. 9 years after Kevin Walsh's arrest, I received a call that I'd been expecting for months. Mr. Hayes, this is Warden Mitchell at FCI Coleman. Kevin Walsh is eligible for parole in 6 months and has requested to send a letter to your family. What kind of letter? An apology letter. It's part of his rehabilitation program. We're not interested. I understand. But Mr. Hayes, there's something else you should know. What? Dr. Walsh has been providing information about other organized crime networks operating against government contractors. His cooperation has led to several arrests. Is he trying to reduce his sentence? His sentence is fixed. This appears to be genuine cooperation. What does he want? To apologize for what he did to your family and to help prevent it from happening to others. I discussed the call with Melissa that evening. Kevin wants to apologize. Apparently, the warden says he's been cooperating with investigations of other criminal networks. Do you believe that? I don't know. After 9 years in federal prison, people sometimes develop genuine remorse. Do you want to hear his apology? I don't need his apology, but his information might help protect other families. What do you want to do? I want to hear what he has to say, but only in a controlled environment with federal agents present. Why? Because if Kevin Walsh has genuine information about ongoing threats to contractor families, I have a professional obligation to hear it. And personally? Personally, I want to look him in the eye and see if he understands what he did to our family. The meeting was arranged at the FBI field office in Norfolk. Kevin Walsh looked older, thinner, and genuinely remorseful as he sat across from us in an interview room with federal agents present. Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, he began, I want to apologize for what I did to your family. What exactly are you apologizing for? I asked. For manipulating your wife's emotions to gather intelligence about your work. For conducting surveillance on your family. For putting your children at risk. Do you understand why what you did was wrong? I understood it was wrong when I was doing it. I did it anyway because I was desperate and scared. Scared of what? Of the people I owed money to. Of losing everything. Of being hurt or killed. So you decided to hurt our family instead. I told myself it was just information gathering, that no one would actually get hurt. Did you believe that? I wanted to believe that, but I knew it was a lie. Melissa spoke for the first time. Did you have any genuine feelings for me, or was it all manipulation? Kevin was quiet for a long moment. I liked you. I enjoyed our conversations. But I never forgot why I was there. Was any of it real? My enjoyment of your company was real. My respect for your intelligence was real. But my motivations were always criminal. How do I know you're being honest now? You don't. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking you to use my information to protect other families. Agent Vance leaned forward. What information do you have? Names, locations, and methods of 3 criminal networks currently targeting government contractors in Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina. How do you know this information? Because they've contacted me in prison, asking about my methods and your family's response. They've contacted you in prison? Criminal network studies successful and unsuccessful operations. My case is studied as an example of how contractor targeting can go wrong. What do they want to know? How you discovered the surveillance. How quickly federal authorities responded. What mistakes I made that they should avoid. What have you told them? Nothing. But I've listened to everything they've told me. Agent Vance looked at me. Mr. Hayes, this information could help us prevent other families from going through what yours experienced. What would Kevin get in return for this information? Nothing. His sentence is fixed, and he's not eligible for early release. Then why is he offering it? Kevin answered himself. Because I've had 9 years to think about what I did to your family. Because I've met other inmates who've destroyed families for money. Because I want to do something right before I get out of prison. When are you eligible for release? 3 years, assuming good behavior. What will you do when you're released? I don't know. I can never practice medicine again. I have no money, no family, no friends who aren't criminals. Are you looking for sympathy? No. I'm looking for a chance to prevent other families from being hurt the way I hurt yours. I looked at Melissa, then at Agent Vance. We'll listen to what he has to say. Kevin Walsh spent the next 4 hours providing detailed information about organized crime networks targeting government contractors throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. His information led to 12 arrests and the disruption of 3 major criminal operations. Was that helpful? Melissa asked as we drove home from the FBI office. Very helpful. His information will protect dozens of families. Do you believe he's genuinely remorseful? I think he's genuinely afraid of spending the rest of his life as a target for other criminals. Does that matter? Not to me personally. But if his fear motivates him to help protect other families, then it serves a useful purpose. Do you forgive him? I don't need to forgive him. I need to use his information to protect other families. What about personally? Personally, Kevin Walsh is irrelevant to our lives now. He was a threat that we neutralized and turned into professional expertise. Do you hate him? No. Hatred would give him power over our emotions. He's just a criminal who made poor choices and is facing the consequences. How do you feel about him wanting to help now? Skeptical but practical. If his information saves other families from what we went through, then his motivations don't matter. What if he contacts us after he's released? He won't. And if he does, we'll report it to federal authorities. Are you concerned about him being released? No. Kevin Walsh will be monitored for the rest of his life. And more importantly, he knows that targeting our family again would result in immediate return to federal prison. 10 years after the original incident, I was retiring from government service to start a private consulting firm specializing in contractor family protection. Melissa was continuing her work with manipulation victims, having developed nationally recognized expertise in the field. Any regrets about how your career turned out? Jim Morrison asked during my retirement ceremony. None. I never expected to become an expert in contractor protection, but it's been the most meaningful work of my life. What's next? Private consulting, helping companies protect their employees' families from criminal targeting. Will you miss government work? I'll miss the resources and authority, but private sector work will let me help more families. What's the most important lesson you've learned? That personal security and national security are inseparable. You can't protect classified information without protecting the people who have access to it. And personally, that trust is earned through consistent actions over time, not through words or feelings. What would you tell other families facing similar threats? Report everything immediately. Don't try to handle it privately. Federal authorities have resources and expertise that families don't have. What about prevention? Education and awareness. Contractor families need to understand their valuable targets and recognize manipulation techniques. Any final thoughts? Kevin Walsh thought he could use my wife's emotions against my family's security. Instead, he gave us the expertise to protect hundreds of other families. Sometimes the best revenge is turning your enemy's attack into your greatest strength. That evening, Melissa and I sat on our back deck, watching Emma and Jackson prepare for their own careers inspired by their childhood experience with criminal targeting. Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if none of this had happened? Melissa asked. Sometimes, but I don't regret how things turned out. Why not? Because we're stronger than we were before. Because our children are better prepared for the world. Because we've helped hundreds of families protect themselves. What's the most important thing you learned? That marriage isn't about avoiding problems. It's about solving problems together. What about trust? Trust isn't about blind faith. It's about earned confidence through consistent actions. Do you trust me more now than before this happened? I trust our relationship more. I understand what we mean to each other in ways I didn't before. How so? Before, I took our marriage for granted. Now I know it's worth fighting for. What would you tell couples facing similar challenges? Don't let criminals destroy your relationship. Use the experience to build something stronger. And if they're tempted to handle it privately, don't. Criminal targeting requires professional response. Families don't have the resources or expertise to handle organized crime alone. What about the future? The future is whatever we build together, and we've proven we can build something pretty remarkable. 15 years after Kevin Walsh's arrest, our family had become a case study in successful response to criminal targeting. Emma was working for NATO's cybersecurity division, protecting international contractors from exactly the kind of threats we'd faced. Jackson was a federal prosecutor specializing in organized crime cases against contractor families. Melissa and I were traveling internationally, training families and security professionals on recognition and response to manipulation tactics. Our marriage had not only survived criminal targeting, it had been strengthened by the experience. Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't found that SD card? A journalist asked during an interview for a magazine article about contractor security. I try not to, I answered. But Kevin Walsh would probably have succeeded in gathering enough intelligence to blackmail me or recruit me as an asset. What would have happened then? Best case scenario, I would have lost my security clearance and my career. Worst case, I would have been prosecuted for espionage. What about your family? Kevin Walsh would have continued manipulating my wife until he got what he wanted. Then he would have disappeared, leaving her to deal with the emotional aftermath. How do you feel about Kevin Walsh now? Professionally, he's a case study in criminal methodology. Personally, he's irrelevant to our lives. Have you had any contact with him since his release from prison? No, and we don't expect to. Kevin Walsh knows that any contact with our family would violate his parole conditions. What's your advice for other families facing similar threats? Report everything immediately to federal authorities. Don't try to investigate or handle it privately. Don't confront suspects directly. What about prevention? Education, awareness, and healthy skepticism. Contractor families need to understand their valuable targets and recognize manipulation techniques. Any final message? Criminal targeting is a professional threat that requires professional response. Families who cooperate with federal authorities almost always have successful outcomes. Families who try to handle it privately usually face escalating threats. And personally, sometimes the worst things that happen to you become the foundation for the best things you accomplish. Kevin Walsh's attack on our family became our expertise in protecting other families. That evening, as Melissa and I prepared for another international training assignment, I reflected on how completely our lives had changed since that Saturday afternoon, when I found an SD card under the passenger seat of my wife's car. Do you regret any of it? I asked Melissa, as we packed for our trip to Australia to train contractor families there. I regret that Kevin Walsh happened to us, but I don't regret how we handled it or where it led us. What's the best thing that came out of it? Our marriage is stronger than ever. Our children are safer and more aware than most adults, and we've helped thousands of families protect themselves from criminal targeting. What's the most important lesson? That trust isn't about blind faith. It's about earned confidence through consistent actions over time. Do you trust people less now? I trust the right people more and the wrong people less. How do you tell the difference? Time, consistency, and whether someone's actions match their words when nobody's watching. What about love? Love isn't about feelings. It's about commitment to someone's well-being even when it's difficult or inconvenient. Is that what we have? That's what we've always had. Kevin Walsh just helped us recognize it. Any advice for couples facing similar challenges? Don't let criminals destroy your relationship. Use the experience to build something stronger. And if they're considering handling it privately, don't. Criminal targeting requires professional response. The resources and expertise exist to help families. Use them. What about the future? The future is protecting other families from what we went through and continuing to build the strongest marriage possible. Are you satisfied with how everything turned out? I'm satisfied that we turned a criminal attack into expertise that protects other families. I'm satisfied that our marriage survived and thrived. I'm satisfied that our children are prepared for whatever the world throws at them. Any regrets? Only one. What's that? That it took a criminal targeting our family for me to fully appreciate what I had. Well, you appreciate it now. Every single day. 20 years after Kevin Walsh was arrested, he died in a car accident 6 months after his release from federal prison. By then, our family had moved beyond thinking of him as anything more than a case study in criminal methodology. Emma was directing international cybersecurity programs for NATO. Jackson was a senior federal prosecutor who had convicted dozens of criminals targeting contractor families. Melissa and I had trained thousands of families in dozens of countries on protection from criminal targeting. Our marriage had not only survived Kevin Walsh's manipulation, it had become stronger than either of us had ever imagined possible. How do you want to be remembered? A documentary filmmaker asked us during what would be our final interview about the case. As a family who turned a criminal attack into expertise that protected other families, I answered. What's your proudest accomplishment? That our children are safer and more aware than most adults their age, and they're using that awareness to protect other families. What about your marriage? We proved that criminal targeting doesn't have to destroy relationships. With proper response and professional help, it can actually strengthen them. Any final advice for families facing similar threats? Report everything immediately to federal authorities. Don't try to handle criminal targeting privately. The resources and expertise exist to help you. Use them. And personally, sometimes the worst attacks become the foundation for the greatest accomplishments. Kevin Walsh thought he could use our emotions against our security. Instead, he gave us the expertise to protect thousands of other families. How do you want this story to end? I looked at Melissa, then at our adult children, then back at the camera. This story doesn't end. It continues every time another family recognizes manipulation tactics and reports them to authorities. It continues every time criminal targeting is stopped before it succeeds. It continues every time someone learns from our experience and protects their own family. And the lesson? That love isn't about avoiding problems. It's about solving them together. That trust isn't about blind faith. It's about earned confidence through consistent actions. And that sometimes the greatest gift your enemies can give you is showing you exactly what you're capable of accomplishing when you're protecting the people you love. The documentary ended there, but our story continues. Because we learned that security isn't just about protecting information, it's about protecting the people who matter most. And we learned that sometimes the most dangerous attacks come from the people who make you feel the safest. But most importantly, we learned that with proper response, professional help, and commitment to each other, families can not only survive criminal targeting, they can emerge stronger than ever. And that knowledge has protected thousands of families who will never know how close they came to going through what we experienced. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's making sure your enemy's attack becomes the foundation for protecting everyone else.